Here we are then everyone, at the end of the W16 era. The next Bugatti hypercar will be a hybrid, albeit one with a V16 engine in it, but you get the sense that's going to be more Rimats and a bit less Volkswagen. So as we say au revoir to the Chiron, we're also closing the chapter on the Ferdinand Piëch masterminded resurrection of the Bugatti brand and how this and that became the fastest cars in the world. So we've arranged a little farewell party for both of the 21st century's Bugattis, the original 987 brake horsepower Veyron and what it evolved into a decade later, the 1,578 brake horsepower Chiron Supersport. Even when the weather is being indecisive, I live for days like this. Bloody hell! So no, this is not that video where we drag race the slowest Bugatti Veyron against the fastest Bugatti Chiron, because, well, what exactly would we learn from that? This has got another 600 horsepower, and as you can see, yeah, the weather's gone British. The Chiron didn't totally rewrite the Veyron's original recipe for an XS all-areas hypercar, but it did refine it. Bugatti had learned how to make its carbon tubs stronger and lighter, so the later car is built to withstand a Le Mans prototype's crash test. And while it's true that the 8-litre quad-turbo W16 engine gained 50% more power, this is way more than a tune-up job. It's actually a lot more progressive to drive thanks to its sequential turbocharging. So right now I'm basically in a twin-turbo Chiron. You're thinking, what are you on about? They never made one of those. Now you see, I'm below 3,800 RPM. And really, on the rev counter, there should be a kind of skull and crossbones at 3,800 RPM, because that is the moment at which a little valve opens in the engine and air is directed not just to 2 turbos, but to all 4. And that is when you really feel the rush. Chiron has a stiffer chassis than the Veyron, superior aerodynamics, not to mention much more malevolent, intricate styling. But underneath, more attention was paid to how this supposed straight line hero car cornered and handled, with the engineers even insisting second time around that only 30% of power should go to the front axle, to give the car a more agile, playful, rear-wheel drive character. Which is why the second most shocking thing about a Chiron, beyond the performance, which is like being rear-ended by a bullet train, is that this is genuinely a lovely sports car to drive. It's bizarre to even think so, but it steers with precision. It feels agile, exploitable. I feel genuinely ridiculous even saying so, but it's comfortable, it's composed. Everything's been raised to the same level as the absolutely titanic power behind you. This may have started life in the Veyron as one man's vision of a 1,000 horsepower, 400 km/h monster, but it's ended up as much, much more than just a numbers car. If there's one person who knows what it's like to find those limits, it's Bugatti's chief test driver, Andy Wallace. A winner of the 24 Hours of Le Mans, at Daytona and Sebring, he was the nerveless pair of hands behind the wheel when a Chiron Supersport 300 Plus edition headbutted its way down the Aerolesian test track to a verified 304.7724 miles an hour. So Andy, you joined Bugatti in, was it 2011?
2011, yep.
You kind of missed the arrival of this, the original Veyron then?
Yes, I did, yeah.
And then, I mean, so are you familiar with them now?
Over the years, of course, I've got to drive all of the cars, and it's really great just to fill in the blanks. Jumping straight into the Veyron Supersport the first time absolutely blew me away. I had no idea that a road legal car could be that fast.
Yeah. So for you, as someone who's like super familiar with all the cars and the models, and you've developed the bolide as well, like the most extreme Bugatti, where's the progress been made for you compared to this, like where it all began back in 2005, and where's this poor old thing been, I don't know, slightly left behind, do you think?
Well, it's easy to miss the fact that this car is pretty much 20 years old. The Veyron's really stood the test of time design-wise. I mean, yes, of course, we've got less power. This is 1,001 horsepower version. The brakes were perfectly adequate 20 years ago, but things have moved on. So you do notice if you arrive at a corner at fairly good speed, you need a firm press,
yeah,
and they're not quite as bitey as they are in the Chiron.
Yeah, and it's a really good point that, 20 years old, you would expect it to feel horribly dated. And yet, most supercars from when this thing was new had single clutch automated manuals. This is a twin clutch like we're used to in almost everything now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was actually the first, as you say, first supercar, hypercar with a double clutch gearbox.
Yeah, that still does the job, doesn't it? I'm just going to reel off, for the benefit of people who don't know your LinkedIn profile off by heart. You did 217 miles an hour in a Jaguar XJ220.
Yep.
So you're 4 miles an hour faster than Martin Brundle, but I bet you never tell him.
Oh, I do when I see him.
And then you did the 243 mile an hour record in the McLaren F1.
That's right.
And then, of course, your most recent speed exploit, 304, I'm going to get this right, 0.7724
Nice one. Yes.
miles an hour in the Chiron Supersport 300 plus ultra car. So I want to put this on the record once and for all. Rank those experiences on the brown trousers scale. What is the most scary?
Well, I'll try and make the answer quick, but as somebody who was crazy about cars from 7 years old, I never thought I would find myself in any of these cars doing these crazy speeds. And I never set out to do it. I was just stood in the right place, or the wrong place, however you view it, at the right time, and I got the job. As the speed, or as the records go, the speed gets more and more and more. And it's getting to the point now where it's pretty seriously fast. So the brown trouser side is coming from the speed rather than the way the car feels at that speed.
Yeah.
To some extent, these records become a bit of a hot potato that's just bouncing around, and I was just stood there and happened to catch it. But no, I feel really lucky, in fact, to be asked to do this.
Yeah, I guess the question is, where does it go next?
All joking aside, which is very easy to do because Andy is the most modest, down-to-earth, quick bloke imaginable, Mr. Wallace here is a very brave man. And not just when he's in the driver's seat. He's sat next to hundreds of Chiron customers on test drives, teaching them how to drive the world's fastest car. Not an easy job when you're dealing with a billionaire who isn't used to being told what to do, or a journalist like our Jack, who is still clenched to this day from this moment on the Nürburgring. But I wanted to hear more about Andy's heroics hitting the fastest speed ever in a production car. And once we'd found him some tasty cake and coffee, he didn't disappoint.
So Andy, bon appetit.
Ollie, thanks mate, this is delicious.
Nice bit of afternoon pie. Now we've done some driving and we can just sit down and have a chat, I just wanted to ask more about your finest hour. 304.7724
Nice one.
miles an hour. You have to get the decimal points in, otherwise he gets very upset. What's that in kilometres? I know you operate in metric now.
490.4837.
There we go. So that record run, it's just, it's extraordinary to watch. But we were just talking about it off camera, and there's something you've got to hear. Can you please tell everyone about the jump?
I can, absolutely. You tend to sort of think in your mind 400 Ks, which is what, close to 250. Anything below that, you're almost not switching your brain on. It's really crazy to say that. So you give it some and it's going, and as soon as it crosses 400 Ks, okay, now concentration. The proving ground in Erlesine has been repaved on not the end where you do VMAX, but the building up speed end. And then there's a join between the new surface and the old surface. And really it's nothing.
So just where they've just stitched kind of new, fresh tarmac to old, and they kind of seal it over, don't they?
Exactly.
It's just one of those.
It's just, and it's sealed, and you can feel it in a normal car, a road car.
Yeah.
As you go over, it's just a little bump. So every time we were doing more and more runs, and I did roughly 1,000 kilometres above 400 k's during the week before, as we built up to this. And every time I was going over that, the car was just momentarily taking off and landing. And I kept saying to the engineers, oh, well, when you go over the jump, the car was quite stable and everything. And they kept saying, well, they were quite annoyed actually. Well, what do you mean jump?
All these guys have honed all the downforce and everything else. What do you mean jump?
Yeah,
right?
why do you call it a jump? I said, well, because it's off the ground. No, it can't be, And then they look at all the data and come back. Oh, yeah, you're right, it's a jump. So,
so briefly, when you were accelerating up to this record speed, all 4 tyres of that Chiron Supersport
were off the ground.
Were off the ground.
Yeah.
At 270, 270 miles an hour?
It was probably about 270, yeah, roughly, in rough numbers.
Just extraordinary.
The thing is, there was quite a lot of crosswind, and along
because it's not difficult enough anyway, so obviously there's got to be crosswind as well.
And so where there's gaps in the trees, the car's moving around, and so you never feel super confident because of that. But then eventually on the last day in the morning, the windsocks were all pointing down, and then you think, oh, now we've got to do it. There's virtually no wind.
Yeah.
So, and to set the scene, you leave the parking area, and it's 20 kilometres for a whole lap. It's an oval. So you set the cruise control at 200 k's, 125 miles an hour, and you just sit there, and it takes quite a while. But as you're doing the lap, you're just basically stabilising temperatures and pressures. But then as you're coming back towards the last banking before the real speed, of course, you know what you've got to do. And you've been there a week already, and you've got to do it. So you've got your sweaty palms, and
Even you get sweaty palms doing the big speeds.
Yeah, and then you arrive, and you knock it down into 4th gear, I think it is, from 7th, up onto the banking. And basically you're looking for, until you can see the exit, and you shouldn't go too early, and you don't want to lift off and go again. You see the exit, then you just squeeze it down. So bam, go down, off the banking, probably a bit quicker than I should have, but it was okay. Some of the engineers were leaning over the fence, and I'd been passing them at around 428 kilometres. This time I passed them at 438, because I went earlier.
And you thought, we're on now?
Yeah, and I thought that was it. And then I know I've got to go over this jump. So I go over the jump, and it landed quite okay. And that's it now, I'm not lifting. I'm staying flat. And it's picking up speed like crazy. Then once you pass 450, which I do know is pretty much exactly 280, after it passes that, of course, you're pushing so much air out of the way. The acceleration's a little bit duller. And it's still, you feel it accelerating, but it's basically you're covering the ground so fast. And the end of the track, the bit where you have to lift off and go around the banking, it's in the distance, but it's coming. So you're willing the speed to continue to go up, and this is coming closer. And it's a game of what shall I do?
You're basically having a game of chicken with your own nerve, are you?
Yeah, you're trying to judge where the right time to lift off is. And because you've never arrived that fast before, it was probably 5 miles an hour slower before, you don't really have a point. You have to sort of invent it yourself. So finally, it's there. It's starting to move around, and we then decided in the end it's not an aerodynamic problem. It was the fact that the wheels are turning so fast that the gyroscopic effect of the wheels turning overcomes the suspension geometry. So the natural, release and it should centre.
Yeah.
At this point, release and it does anything else but centre. And that's because it's not normal to go over 300 miles an hour. But anyway, so this is happening. So you really are very aware of the movement and the speed's coming up and the end of the road's coming, and you've got so many things to concentrate on, and you have to pick a spot to lift off. And so the trouble is, we didn't reach Vmax, which I think maybe it takes another 2 or 3 kilometres to get that, but it was still climbing, but in the end you've got to call it a day.
Whoa, so hang on, so 304.77.24, yeah, that is the claim, and that was verified, it was done on the data and everything.
Yeah.
But there was more in it.
It was still climbing, still gradually climbing.
And that would have, so it's just all about space, it's not about, if we'd had, better weather or different tyre pressures. It's just purely about having a long enough straight, and even aerolessing isn't long enough.
It's just, yeah, it's not quite long enough.
It's an incredible feat
sparking.
of engineering and of driving, and it sort of brings me to the fact that when I've watched a video of you doing 391, it will not go any more than 391, but 391's quite fast. That was like the immortal line in the McLaren F1 at Aerolesi.
It will not go any more than 391. But anyway, 391's quite fast, isn't it?
And I think a lot of, maybe a lot of people watching thought, oh, I'll never see a street car go faster than that. That did, and then it was, and then it started a real ding-dong battle, and then of course the Chiron's now up there as the king. These records that we think are unbeatable are always challenged, and I'm kind of fascinated. So you're currently in the throne. What would you say to the person out there who is going to one day strap themselves into a car and attempt to beat 304.7724?
Well, I mean, records first are to be broken, aren't they? And if throughout human history, you've always tried to go faster, longer, higher. So, yeah, I mean, good luck.
Good luck. I mean, if Bugatti was to build such a thing, would you'd be putting on your Nomex that morning? You'd be putting on the lid and being like, I'm up for it?
It's very tempting, isn't it?
Right, I think with that, we've earned some pie.
Yeah, I think we have too.
What a guy. What a driver. I think every petrol head on earth owes Andy a debt of thanks and a slice of rhubarb cake for living out our top trump, top speed fantasies and verifying the VMAXs we all know off by heart. Where Bugatti and ultimate speed runs go from here, well, that's anyone's guess. My job for the rest of today is to take the Chiron home.
It's weird, since the last time that we'll drive a Bugatti Chiron kind of in period, maybe Top Gear will never drive one again, and even if we do, well, it will be the old model. It will be the legacy car.
That's poignant because, like you, I've grown up with these cars branded into my brain as the benchmarks. Long before I worked at Top Gear, I was a fan glued to the TV show watching Jeremy race a plane and a train from Italy to London. Watching Hammond race a Veyron against a Eurofighter Typhoon jet. And watching Captain Slow himself max the Veyron Supersport at Aerolesi, thankfully without doing a jump.
I remember being in the Top Gear office the day that we got the mysterious pictures of the new car, this secret new Chiron, and the performance figures were off the charts again, but we were all just looking at it going, oh yeah, that's better than the Veyron, that looks hot. And then a few months later, seeing Chris Harris on the TV show get the world exclusive drive and do what I think is still the only true power slide I've seen in one of these, which I think I'll keep it that way today. Actually, I'm not going to have a go.
Last year, I finally got my shot at going really fast in a Bugatti and hit 250 miles an hour on the Space Shuttle runway at Cape Canaveral. It's one of the most exciting things I've ever done in a car, but it was also fascinating to meet Bugatti owners and chat to them about why they dropped 2 or 3 million quid on one. Because, well, of its quality, its integrity, and the fact that it's not actually just a flex. It's an engineering masterclass. And I simply don't believe that any car from the Volkswagen Group in the last 20 years would have been as good if it wasn't for Trial by Veyron. Whether you're driving a 911 Turbo or a Polo DSG, I've bumbled along in both and thought, no, this wouldn't be as solid or as sorted if it wasn't for what they learned with Bugatti.
So I'm not going to try and change your mind, because I feel like you probably know where you stand on these Bugattis by now. You probably love them, or maybe you just respect them, or maybe you think that they're a complete overweight waste of time. But I do think that this car doesn't have as many haters as maybe it did 20 or so years ago. And you can't tell me that the Veyron didn't totally reignite and reinvigorate the top speed war. There's no way that Koenigsegg and SSC or Hennessy would have tried so hard to do 260, 270, 290 and beyond if it wasn't for Bugatti always being there and always setting the gold standard. I feel like this car might just be moving out of its pantomime villain era. You know, the kind of Max Verstappen, Roger Federer vibe, when something's just too good, too unbeatable, and you almost cheer on anything that takes it on out of default. But then afterwards, after it's gone, then you kind of find you had an affection for it all along. So maybe it's only after the death of the mastermind of the Veyron and then its child, the Chiron, Ferdinand Piëch, and the W16 quad turbo engine that he wanted at the heart of it, that we'll think, wow, yeah, we were lucky to be alive to see that kind of madness get engineered. I mean, you can argue the toss all day whether or not it's the greatest hypercar or even my favourite hypercar, but I do just feel lucky and privileged to have lived in a world where people are not only mad enough to conceive projects like this, but also clever and bloody minded enough to see them through to existing.
So it'll be interesting to see if a Veyron or a Chiron becomes one of those priceless historic cars. Remember, in the 1990s, Ferrari 250 GTOs weren't that sought after, and you could get a McLaren F1 for cheaper than new, whereas they're now £25 million. Will Veyrons and Chirons ever get up there? Well, they did build them in the hundreds rather than in the tens, and it has no motorsport pedigree, but of all the unobtainium hypercars, I reckon it's still the only one that you would win at auction and then get into and drive home in the rain.
Oh, wow, that car. Anyway, try not to be too sad for the ending of this Bugatti era, because we're about to show you the next one, and I think I can hear it coming. So make sure you're subscribed to the Top Gear channel and see you back here on June the 20th for the next chapter.